Oh hey, I'm glad you're here. This is the season finale of Season 4 of VHS. This also marks quite an occasion because the podcast, where each episode is about a film and the guest has the profession portrayed in the film, is turning 1. Yes! With the help of my amazing producer JL and our sponsor Marshall's Hot Sauce, we were able to bring you 32 episodes, about 31 films, and I'd like to thank all of my guests so far, and of course, you for listening. If you'd like to help me celebrate, please send me a little congratulations note on your preferred platform. On Facebook, you can post anything, even a smiley face would be greatly appreciated on our VHS Podcast Facebook group, where people can go and discuss the films and episodes. You can leave a comment on any of the posts. On Twitter and Instagram, VHUS_podcast. Just pop on there and leave a comment, follow along. I see numbers of downloads, but I'd love to see and hear from you as a person. Also, we're on Patreon. Simply go to patreon.com/VHUS. We have some lovely ways to interact, and you can help ensure that this podcast will make it to year 2. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you. Now, do you think when a proctologist gets home from a long day, their significant other says, "Welcome home. How was your day at the orifice?" Anybody? The medical field. I think this is our first, and because of that, it warrants another first. This comes with a warning. Due to the profession and subject matter in the film, I thought it responsible just to say that if you are squeamish about medical things say in a surgical manner, the opening of the human body, if that made you sweaty, just maybe listen responsibly. Do not listen to this episode while operating a vehicle. I in no way am saying that it's too graphic by any means, but I also can't judge what is good for one person or bad for another. So for safety's sake, if you want to proceed, maybe do so from a couch. And if you find yourself getting sweaty or lightheaded, maybe stop the podcast and get a drink of water, take a walk around, practice smiling. I don't know. I just felt the need, because I know some people who are squeamish, that we just put a little warning up top to say, look, there's some things that are mentioned, and if that's too much for you, maybe this one's not for you. But it's a great episode, and I hope you can get to it. With that in mind, the film is Body Parts, the guest is a physician's assistant, and this is VHUS. Hello, and welcome to VHUS, the podcast where each episode is about a film and the guest has the profession or experience portrayed in the film. I'm your host, Eric Marshall. Joining me in the studio is Matt, who is a physician assistant at an orthopedic joint replacement center. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Now, question number 1 is, what does that mean?
Basically, it's a medical profession, kind of like a nurse practitioner, where you get a degree as a physician assistant, get a master's degree to assist the physician in medical duties, not too different than a medical doctor.
Okay.
Write some prescriptions, read x-rays, actually have my own patient load, do injection procedures, just busy doing a lot of those today.
Yeah.
And then I assist in the operating room, which is one of the reasons I got into this.
And that's a big reason why we're here today. The reason I'm joined by Matt is because we're brought together by the film Body Parts.
It was quite a delight.
Was this a first time watch for you?
Yes, it was. I was familiar with some other guys in the movie, for sure, but first time I've ever seen that.
Awesome. The synopsis is: a man fears he is possessed by the soul of a serial killer whose arm he received in an experimental transplant. They don't mention turtlenecks at all, which is strange, because there's a star in this film that is not mentioned. And at the time of this recording, you can rent it at Movie Madness or whatever your local video store is. Also, feel free on Instagram to tag your local video store. I always like to see those. You can try to get a VHS shelf in the store where people could find the films from the podcast and rent them. It's a beautiful Blu-ray you can also find from Shout Factory. You can stream it on Amazon, YouTube, etc. First, let's put the film in context. The director, Eric Red, did Cohen and Tate in 88, Body Parts in 91, Bad Moon in 96, which is an underrated gem of a werewolf movie, 100 Feet in 2008, but his maybe bigger claim to fame was as a writer who wrote The Hitcher, Blue Steel, and Near Dark, which are all absolutely great. The cinematographer Theo Van de Sande He's a beast. Started in '69. There's 111 credits, so I'm gonna list them all. No, I'm just kidding.
We got time.
Yeah. The First Power in 1990, which I just rewatched with my wife. I love it. Body Parts in 91. Wayne's World in 92.
Wow.
Exit to Eden in 94, which if you don't know what that is, I'll say Dan Aykroyd, Rosie O'Donnell, S&M Island Party.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a feast for the eyes.
Not a math equation you would expect to
No.
come together.
No, it's not a film you'd expect to see. Volcano in 97, Blade in 98, Big Daddy, Little Nicky, and Grown Ups 2 from Adam Sandler.
Wow.
So quite a lot of cinematography there.
Yeah, a lot of genres there.
Yes. The editor, Anthony Redman, Kolchak the Night Stalker in 74, ton of television, Incredible Shrinking Woman in 81, Red Heat in 85, King of New York in 90, Life Stinks, Body Parts, and Highlander 2 The Quickening, all in 91. Bad Lieutenant, Street Fighter in 94, and keeps going back to Eric Red with 100 Feet in 2008.
Yeah.
Actors, Jeff Fahey.
Yes.
Man. Silverado in 85, Psycho 3 in 86, Wyatt Hunter Blackheart in 90, Body Parts in 91. Now we get like peak Fahey. So we got Lawnmower Man in 92,
Yes.
Wyatt Earp in 94, Planet Terror in 2007 for people not familiar with the earlier work, and he's still going strong. So you gotta love Fahey.
It would be a marathon in and of itself to work through his entire film credit.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
And his covers always have a nice silhouette of him kind of looking off in the distance.
Yeah, with his beautiful Fahey eyes. It's pretty amazing. He also has one of those hair styles that was the perfect time. Like, you know, a couple years earlier, it just wouldn't jive too well. But like, you watch Body Parts and you're like, now that's a mane.
Yeah.
You know, it's really... Sometimes it feels forced in movies like Van Damme and Lionheart. And sometimes the hair just matches the character so well. His wife in the film is actress Kim Delaney. She was in All My Children, Delta Force in 86, tons of TV, Body Parts in 91, Project Metal Beast in 95, which is about a robotic werewolf.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. CSI, NYPD Blue, Army Wives, and she's still going strong in the television, so that's pretty awesome. Actors, we got Lindsay Duncan. She's in Birdman, which is an amazing film. She's done excellent work on TV and in films, but she's Dolphin Blue in my favorite film of all time from 1990, The Reflecting Skin. Yeah, there you go. Special effects, we've got David Neil Trifonovich, who did Shape of Water, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, FX2, The Dream Team, and Adventures in Babysitting. Special makeup effects is our last credit. It's Gordon Smith, who worked on Platoon, Near Dark, Jacob's Ladder, Natural Born Killers, and being a film with so many practical effects, we just have to mention these names to recognize these artists and the teams involved. But let's press play on Body Parts.
All right.
We start off with the credit sequence, and it starts off with text that spirals into cool veins, art, bones, and bodies. It's an awesome sort of thriller sequence set to the music of Luke Dicker. Some people don't know this, but Saul Bass was brought in and had the idea to use these specific grisly medical effects. Saul was a filmmaker, but also mostly known from doing the credit sequences of Psycho, Goodfellas, and Man with the Golden Arm.
That was his credit with the Saw. The Saw idea.
No, that's the director, for sure.
So what happened this morning, Ray?
I don't fucking know, man. It just come over me like something unstoppable, you know?
We first see on screen is Bill Kruschek, played by Paul Van Victor. He's in handcuffs because he's a bad man. He's being interviewed with the dreamiest of Fahey's. And it's peak Fahey. It's sad that his turtleneck work went sadly unrecognized by the Academy, but Paul's acting in the scene is pretty awesome.
So how does this make you feel, Ray? Taking someone else's life. How does this make you feel about yourself? How do you feel?
What do you mean? I feel great.
Why does he always play the prisoner,
Paul?
the mad, angry prisoner?
This was like the start of it for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, he had mailed a tape in, and the director saw it and was just like, oh, this is the guy. Like, they were auditioning people, and nobody seemed sort of evil enough. And there's some of these actors that have this way of, like, tapping into this, like, sort of out of control way of being. Like when you watch him in the scene, there's parts where he seems he's commanding things, and there's parts where he sort of reverts into being like a damaged individual almost. And it's really nuanced, but it's probably why he continued to get those roles. And sometimes it's just an actor's face. I mean, you know, you call a Buscemi a Buscemi. The new Shout Factory has a beautiful conversation with Paul on it about how he got the role. I highly recommend it. We next see Fahey and his wife in bed in silk, as they should be. She's having wine, and they talk about the killer he's interviewing, and Jeff says,
You know what I'd really like to do? I'd just like to cure one human being. That's all, just one.
Every psychologist or mental health professional's dream.
yeah, they have to. One glass of wine in bed. We see Fahey with his family. He's a good family guy, and he sets off to work, starting the largest set piece in the film. He's recording as he drives down the freeway, and he's talking on his little recorder, and he notices a loose tire on a car. This is years before movies like The Final Destination, but you instantly know, like, well, that's not going to be good. It pops off, he swerves and stops safely, but gets rear-ended by a semi in an awesome stunt that involves a real stuntman going out the windshield, which was not supposed to happen, and go over the top of the car.
Oh.
Yeah, luckily the stuntman was not injured, and they had the footage to keep and use in the film, but otherwise it would have been, I think, a dummy going over the top. It would have looked pretty bad. Luckily no one was hurt. His wife meets Lindsay Duncan in the hallway.
He'll live. But, Mrs. Cruciate, I'm sorry. We can't save his arm.
Oh, God.
No. Now, I want you to listen to me very carefully.
Oh.
I can give him a new arm.
She allows about 30 seconds for her to cope with this information.
Forget consent.
Yeah, questionable bedside manner, maybe. We get an amazing POV shot as Fahey is wheeled into the surgical chamber. They did a stretched image using spherical lenses, which was pretty new at the time. It's a great effect for feeling like you're out of sorts. He sees armed guards, and then we see his very beefy shoulder with clamps on it. Which my question to you is it common to wheel people around with just exposed, beefy shoulder wounds?
That was probably the part of the movie where things kind of came to a halt for me.
Okay.
The first time.
Yeah.
Where, you from just kind of that relation of like, okay, accident, injury. Okay, I get it. He's going to get a transplant of some sort. Okay, stop. What?
Right.
What's happening here?
Well, because they have a bandage on his chin, but not his huge open shoulder, which is like a side of lamb or something.
Yeah. Good technique on that.
Yeah.
And then, yes, there's many parts of that scene. The guards, as you mentioned, were always very amusing.
Oh, yeah. I had some questions about that for sure. In the scene, you can see a large magnifying glass machine in the corner. And the director said that those they borrowed or redesigned something to look like it because they noticed those in the surgical room at the time for people to sew nerves or veins together. Is this a...
Interesting. I have not come across that in my experience.
Okay.
We've had vascular, maybe from the 1950s.
It must have been.
Yes.
Yeah. It was probably a small town. But I thought that was very interesting. I've never heard of someone sewing nerves.
Yeah, well, you can approximate them. And the vasculature, I could see that. But in the 90s, they would have had the technology where they wouldn't relied on large magnifying glass. I guess.
How do you connect veins and nerves?
Well, it's been a while since I've been a part of a...
is it Velcro?
Yes, Velcro,
Okay.
duct tape,
Yes. Perfect.
medical glue. There is an approximation process where you can bring vasculature together and kind of sew vessels together. And usually I'm a part of the removing, and that's what you get left.
Right.
Instead of the let's attach something. So
There's an attachment team.
There is usually vasculature and the vascular team and the neurologists that come in and would be present. Yeah.
Bill. There's nothing to worry about. Everything's just
fine. We see someone read the last rites to the other person, and then the craziest saw is introduced.
Yes.
And I believe the director saw the saw saw, and was like, we're going to use that. And everyone was like, that's not what you would use in this situation at all. Then she beheads a guy, and there's a cool computer image of the head coming off the body.
Yes.
And then a masked man snaps, and all the armed men leave. How many of your operations involve an execution?
None.
Okay.
Yeah, and I hope I never have to come across that panic situation.
Yeah. It's a really interesting movie set piece to have in there, but it is very odd.
Yes, the lack of sterility for such a procedure.
Yes.
I guess when you live in that world and you see, like, you walk in and the guards still have their police uniforms on, but just the gown draped over in a mask,
Right.
holding their shotguns at the ready.
Yeah.
And then that saw was precious, a real precious gem.
Yeah. It's a really delicate tool.
Yes, it looked like a Ace Hardware special.
Yes, for sure. Next, Fahey wakes up. He's filled in on the situation, and he's in traction. Is that the term?
Yeah. Probably some kind of, I'm trying to remember the mechanical support that he had on the arm.
Oh, right, because you would know the names of all those. I should have wrote that down. I just figured it was one type of thing.
No, I think you're right, actually, because the traction unit's going to help hold and support the arm. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Webb. You lost your arm in a car accident yesterday. We've transplanted another arm for you.
He looks awful, and the realistic image provides us with a sort of proper sense of what's going on in the film. The director said it was necessary for it to feel gritty and realistic for the film to work, which I think they do a great job, because you're watching this fantastical Frankenstein thriller, and they ground it, I think, really well. The next scene, the doc pulls the bandages off, and this is an image, and when I saw this movie in the theater, this was one of the takeaways mentally for me. It's really, I don't want to say haunting or horrific, but somewhere in between. You see these scars going along his arm, and his fingers are all swollen. I don't know. It was an image I couldn't really shake.
Yeah, it was an interesting, like, grafting meets Frankenstein. It's like, if you're going to transplant an arm, you'd probably do it at the proximal attachments. They're close to the shoulder, and
Right.
it'd be kind of fluid, and you'd kind of bind things, and you'd have to strip things back a little bit, but I guess they weren't much into cosmetics at the time.
Right. Yeah, everyone in this is really scarred up, seriously.
Emotionally.
Which, if she just has that one saw.
Yes, it's true. It's true. You kind of wonder.
She asks if we can move it, and it slightly moves. So there you go. Do you see much past the removal stage for what you do, or like, are you a part of any type of aftercare, or do you have any of that?
Yeah, I follow patients following these procedures and the recuperation and recovery.
Okay.
To say I've been a part of, like, an organ transplant of some sort to see how that works, I haven't. But with joint replacements and the line of work that I do, then yeah, I mean, we follow them all the way through to the time we clear them out of the medical practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you said, joint replacements. So predominantly you work on taking like a leg off or a knee out, or what is it exactly?
Yeah, so we'll take a worn out or fractured hip bone, so basically your femur and your pelvic socket, and we resurface them. So we'll remove the top of the femur and put in like a metal stem, titanium grade stem, and then we'll ream out the socket and put in a titanium cup, and we put in a liner and make sure they fit so there's stability.
And this is all done in the room?
All done in the operating room. And then we do knee replacements, so you basically take the cartilage off the end of the femur and thigh bone, the back of the kneecap, and the top of the shin bone, and you put in titanium components and cement them into place and make sure they're stable before closing a joint. Probably the only transplant thing I've done is we've done a couple ligament grafting from cadaver grafts, or when you're like fixing a ACL in a knee, or sometimes you're repairing like a large, like a hamstring or patellar tendon in your thigh, or an Achilles tendon injury. You'll do grafting from a cadaver. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Quite an intense scenario.
Has anyone ever come back and been like, I keep kicking people because I have this killer's nerve grafted into my knee.
Unfortunately, not. I always warn them because I always see them right before surgery and do something called a preoperative examination. And for those that have a sense of humor, you always joke about, like, look, we don't know who the cadaver graft is from.
Right.
You're not going to wake up with some New York accent,
Yes.
craving like a bagel of lox, and wonder where your grandchildren are.
Right.
And yes, you're not going to have all that. You know, you're going to be just the same person. Because I think that's really what they worry about. They fret a little bit about, what does this mean inside my body?
Yeah. There was something that came out, I think it was a year after this film, about a man in France that had a hand graft, a transplant.
Oh, yeah.
Transplant, and it took fine, but eventually he asked to have it removed because he's I think the quote was, he was like, this is not part of me. Like,
Yeah.
it was something mental. I don't know.
Hands are hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's working on a lot of cadavers through the education process. I didn't have a problem doing anything on the body except when it came to the face and the hands. And I could almost do faces more than I could do hands. When you literally would work on a hand and put your hand in a cadaver hand, you'd feel like a connection. At least I would.
Yeah.
Because you could feel the ridges of the fingerprints, and you can see, it's like a story. Like, you look at somebody's vessels and their scars on the hand, you get an idea of kind of who they were.
Yeah.
So that part is always haunting. Like, if I stop and I think long enough about all the cadavers I've worked with, the hands give me chills.
Sure.
But it also gives me kind of like the solace of like tranquility, and they're resting peacefully.
When you are, say, like, working within a body, or doing any of the things you said involving knees or joints and things like that, does the wear and the build-ups of things tell you a story as well when you look at it?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, we'll go into joints, and you might have somebody like in a knee, like an old ACL injury, or they've had a fracture with this huge deformity. Some people have these irregular bony growths, or they just have these huge spikes on their bones from kind of a chondral defect, they call it, a cartilage developmental defect. In hips, if they've had a history of alcohol abuse or drug use, they have these huge cysts. So you take the head out on their femur, and it just looks like it's collapsible, like you could stick your thumb in these things. Yeah, it's crazy what the body's capacities are. And sometimes you open a knee and look at the tissues, and you think, okay, well, it's just red, right? Tissues are going to be red and bloody, but people have like gray tissues and purple tissue, and I've had green tissue.
Whoa.
Because it's just kind of how these layers, whether it's trauma, repetitive trauma, or maybe they're a smoker, or they've had prior surgeries. There's a whole myriad of things that cause all this stuff. Yeah.
Wow. It's fascinating, really.
It is. It's the textures and the feels and yeah. And sometimes we'll just stop the surgical case and pass it around and just kind of explore it and see what's going on with what that is.
That's how you learn,
Yeah.
Interesting. When you were talking at first about, I don't know, you said reaming something and something else.
The hip, yes.
Yeah. It made me think of shop class, where there was just all these woodworking tools that I didn't understand, and you would see people do amazing things with it and create like certain shapes out of wood that it was like, I didn't see that there. Like, I would make something like a square peg, and someone to do something like you're saying with like a hip bulb or something. I don't know. It's definitely a crazy like art form that you.
Yeah, orthopedics is a big engineering form for sure. I mean, these the docs I work with are very skilled surgeons. It looks very crude and it sounds very crude, but at the same time, I mean, what they're able to put together sometimes is incredible.
Yeah.
As strong and resilient as the bones in the human body are, they can shatter into pieces, and to put that puzzle back together and in that kind of a stressful environment is incredible.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Shop class is very much like, it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they don't entrust us with much in the medical world, but when it comes to fixing bones and sewing people back up again, we get the green light.
Yeah. That's until pharmaceuticals get involved in bones.
Ah, yes.
Now, Fahey is training with weights, and there are bolts in his bones that seem like a terrible idea for training. Do people in traction really start weightlifting and things? Like, is that...
No, not
you're
to
gonna
that
want
point.
to weight, probably.
Yeah, I think that was right around the time of what was it Rocky IV maybe?
Yeah.
They had the
They gotta
Russian.
You gotta have that training montage for sure. All of a sudden, it jerks forward with the weight, and suddenly we get a montage of him working just the heck out of that arm, just building it up. It's getting stronger and stronger. So strong, he gets to leave.
That's true.
Yeah, so you'd be like, see you later, Fahey. And he'd be like, thank you, Matt.
Didn't he have that one moment where he kind of, it gets taken over? Almost like it's possessed, like, and he's lifting, and it almost clicks in, like, wait a second.
Yeah.
This isn't mine.
Yep, I think
That scares him a little bit.
It does. I think that's the jerk part, but there might be another part. So he gets to leave. He leaves. The news is there.
Feel to have someone else's arm.
Come on, here they come. How does your family feel about the operation?
Mr. Cruikshank, do you think the operation will affect your sex life?
Mr. Cruikshank, could you charge your arm so we can get a shot?
Hold it up for the cameras, please.
Let's have a look at it.
I really don't think you people should be talking to me. You should be pointing the cameras at Dr. Webb. She's going to be a Nobel Prize winner.
He just completely passes all the focus. He's like, don't focus on me being a miracle. This is the person that did it all. And she talks to the news, but what we don't get is where she got started in this whole path to remove limbs and things. But where did you get started in your path?
Nice.
To where you're at now?
Boy, that sounds like a deep psychological journey. I've always been curious about that stuff. Boy, how much time do we have?
It's wherever you want to start it.
Well, I was one of those rural Midwest kids, so my time was getting thrown outside of playing, curiously dissecting frogs. This is not going to turn into a Jeffrey Dahmer story, so don't worry.
We had a dog for a brief period of time.
That roadkill was my friend. But yeah, we grew up hunting. So, I mean, from the moment I was a kid, I'd go out, sit in the woods or fishing, and you were expected to learn how to clean these animals. I mean, Thanksgiving, it's funny. People here, or most places, will think Thanksgiving is family, turkey, football. Thanksgiving for me was deer hanging in the woods with their carcasses opened with a 4x4 or 2x4 rather, so they could dry out in the cold weather, and then it would be a processing day. So I was always involved in poking the eyeball and exploring it when my dad wasn't around to see, like, what's inside this thing. Sticking your head in and looking in the rib cage. Yeah, it sounds macabre, but I was curious like that. And
yeah, some people are attracted to bodies and lives and how they work and whatnot, and other people are just completely repulsed by the whole thing. Yeah. Which is why this episode has a warning at the beginning.
Nice.
So that we can have a candid conversation and not worry about someone passing out while driving a car.
That's well played, yes. That's a good preface. You're right. Like I look at it, my dad is a firefighter back home, and he would be the Jaws of Life guy. So he'd be showing up at scenes, and being in a small community, when he did go out, you'd know who it was, or
sure.
Right or wrong, you'd talk about it because he probably didn't have anybody else to. So he always dealt with it and always said it's just a job, you got to do it. And I've always had that ability too. So just always interested in the body, played a lot of sports, and knew I wasn't going to do anything with that. But I was curious about how I was capable of playing it. And got into a cadaver lab right away in undergrad for anatomy class and was hooked. And I thought that was going to be my life. I really wanted to be an anatomy professor. So I kind of sought out that realm and was always just following that pathway. Yeah.
And that led to
PA school.
Yeah.
PA school. I was actually wanted to be a pediatrician. So that might be a little scary considering what I just said. Yeah, I actually went back to school. Thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, and met my wife, and her dad is a vascular surgeon, and he said, if you want to marry my daughter and actually spend time and see her, don't be a doctor.
Yeah.
So I started looking he told me about being a PA, and I looked into programs, and at that time I was a non-traditional student, having had a career previously, and got accepted, and it just worked out from there.
And how long have you been doing that?
10 years. Wow. Yeah, just come up on
awesome.
10 years, yeah. Yeah, I thought I wanted to be in the ER. I really wanted to be in the ER because I thought, not being afraid of a lot of the stuff. Did an ER rotation, and it was intense. Gunshot wounds, stabbings, sewed a lot of lawnmower fingers up. Yes. Oh, yeah. I did a lot of sewing on that rotation.
Yeah.
But in the end, I chose orthopedics.
Yeah. How are your stitch work? Pretty good?
I think I'm pretty solid.
Yeah.
Awesome. Funny thing is, my mom's maiden name means to sew in German. And so, little, it's kind of hard to go back and tell my grandma and grandpa who are still alive with that name to be like, well, I did something with it.
Yeah.
It's not.
You just like show her your work and she just passes out.
Oh.
That's
great. My lampshades.
I was thinking I have a hole in this pocket of these pants.
I might sew it tight to your thigh, though. That's how I'm
That's
trained.
true, yeah.
Mommy explained why I was away in the hospital, right? And she told you I got hurt. And, well, they took care of me in the hospital, and I'm all better now. And I just want to know if you have any questions.
No, Dad. No questions.
No questions.
Fahey returns to his family and asks if they have questions. Now, with your profession, I think previously when we were talking, I wanted to ask questions, and you were like, yeah, go ahead. And I think your significant other was like, no, like, let's not. I think we were eating dinner or something at the time. So I can only imagine that people either want to know or don't want to know more about what you do.
Correct. That's stark. Yeah. Yeah, and I have a tendency to go really into it and kind of I like explaining things at a visceral level.
Yeah.
Because that's how I learn. So I try to get it to explain the way it feels or the way it sounds or the way it looks. So yeah, I think that's where it gets a little bit much for people quickly.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you talk and share your profession and have us talk about this movie, because it is so special effects heavy. And as a kid, I gravitated towards these movies with the gore and the fantastical stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Not so much as like I was like a gore hound, but I loved the practical effects of it. And when things looked real, I was like, how did they do that? Because I knew it wasn't real. And it's just fascinating to have someone who actually is doing this, where you're pulling things out of sockets, but it's all to like help somebody.
Same curiosity. I could go without the jumping out scare.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
But the how did that guy morph into a werewolf? Those are some of my favorite scenes. Is the guys that become the werewolves, like the classic American Werewolf in London, and then the Benicio del Toro, his werewolf movie.
Oh, is it called Wolf or something?
I think
like that?
so. Yeah, and
that's the Jack Nicholson one. Is it the same one?
No, different.
I
think the Benicio del Toro one is a little bit more of a classic tale.
Okay, I should know.
But just that transformation was always.
The Rick Baker stuff in Werewolf in London is, I mean,
yes,
can't really beat it. It's so just disturbing and incredible. The bone cracking sounds and really gets you. Both his son and wife have amazing turtlenecks in this scene. The daughter asks to see the arm, and the son says,
Dad, it's sort of gross.
Come on, guys. I know it looks a little funny, but, well, it's not how it looks. It's how it works, right?
So they go out to play catch, and then he has intimacy with his wife.
Oh, yes.
They aren't wearing their silk PJs for this scene, and it's kind of twisted because the hand that touches her is the killer's hand. The killer's hand makes the first move, and it's the first time we really see the film shooting these limbs where they're sort of like their own characters. They're like taken over by the killer, and you, as a viewer, sort of feel like, oh, that's not really his, like, right now. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting.
It's one word to say.
Yes. Next, he's back teaching, and he asks if what keeps someone in line and what sets somebody off. And one thing that sort of set me off was this turtleneck in this scene, which is a half turtleneck, which means it's just enough to be on your, like, Adam's apple. So I give that a 1 out of 5 on the body parts turtleneck scale, or the BPTS for the rest of this conversation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. He goes to shave with the new arm, cuts himself really bad, and he says,
Oh! Ah, shit! Son of a bitch!
So he is essentially set off. The next move is to see the convict Bill Cruikshank again, who recognizes evil.
That's right.
Within Fahey.
Maybe you got some kind of little demon inside of you these days. How about that, Doc? You've been losing sleep lately?
Let me ask you this, Ray. Does it make it easier for you to talk to me, seeing me like this? Do you trust me? I want you to trust me.
They reach out to shake hands, and they both have striker tattoos, which are only given out on death row. So Fahey goes to get his prints run, because that's what you would do. He walks right into a police station. We, I guess, think they know him because they oblige him, print him, and it comes back that his arm belongs to a convicted and executed murderer. That being Charles Fletcher, no relation to Angela Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote. He talks with his wife, and she says,
Honey, you have this guy's arm. You don't have his personality.
I don't know.
So he goes to talk to the doctor, and she says, I didn't tell you because I thought it would impede your recovery.
Or impede the surgery.
Yeah, is that... I don't think you can really...
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Full disclosure.
Yeah,
yes,
that's important.
Unfortunately.
Right?
Just a wee bit.
You can't just wake up with someone else's arm and be like, we just figured... What are you going to do?
Yeah, this is kind of where that critical thinking part starts to fall apart in this movie, where you're kind of looking at it saying, nobody else thought of that?
Right. It's true. He says, You
put a killer's arm onto my body and you didn't tell me. I now have a murderer's blood in my blood.
That's not like... If you were putting a... Would you drain it? I mean, would you just be like, it got to be full of however much blood? How does that work, do you think?
There does have to be some preservation to it. So in most organs...
You can't just rinse it out in a sink or something?
No, yeah, you're not going to run like bleach through it.
Okay, got it. All right, well, that's good to know. In this scene, Jeff's turtleneck is minor and is sort of loose and flappy, so it scored about a 2 out of 5 on the VPTS for that. Moving on, we see Mark Draper, played by Peter Murnick. You've seen him on Seinfeld and Mindhunter. He's got the legs. I'll be referring to him as legs from now on. Again, the makeup effects and the scarring are quite unsettling. In this scene, so according to your field, this below-the-waist situation is kind of your specialty.
Uh-huh.
What was your thoughts, if any, on the scene where we first see legs and he's sort of on the parallel bars, I guess?
That's right. He was walking. I was getting a little ahead of myself, but yeah, I was thinking of the further scene down the road.
Oh, yeah, no, we'll get to that.
Yeah, just the whole concept was like, really, that's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And I was curious about his story about how he lost both legs.
Well, that's the weird part is he says he had an accident 2 years prior.
Uh-huh.
So did they just say like, hey, we got some legs? And he was like, I'll be right down.
What did his old legs look like?
Yeah.
How bad were they?
It makes no sense. He's just like, look, lose your legs and that'll put things in perspective is like what he says to him. But when you think about it, like all these other people, I think, had accidents.
Yeah. But it almost takes the words right out of my mouth. I'm trying to think of it. The amount of, if you thought the scars were bad to put on an arm, the scarring that would extend and what it would require to put on legs is incredible.
Yeah.
You think of the pelvis and the lower back anatomy, the abdominal anatomy, all that's got to cross over. Wow. So those scars would be running north and south halfway up his torso.
I did think it was interesting. And again, like, my purpose in this podcast isn't to like tear movies down or talk about whether things are completely factual or accurate or good or bad, but they're all great for topics of discussion. And I thought there's an interesting like sort of flap work done in this, like where a lot of movies they just have like the one suture, and that's how they put the arm on. But in this one, like Fahey's, you can see it on his back. There's like, and on the leg guy, you can see where there's some sort of like they cut the skin like in a sheath or something. I don't know. It's part of that not knowing the information makes it sort of creepier. Yeah,
true. Yeah, I think for a horror presentation, some of that, because again, what becomes of this, knowing what you know up front about the incisions and the way they did the surgery. Yeah, it definitely adds a little bit more of a darker, horrific outcome.
It's unsettling.
Yes.
Like, if it was done really nicely, then you'd be like, well, that's pleasant.
It's a little harder to imagine that coming off.
Yeah.
What do you want?
I need to talk to you.
You need to talk to me. What about?
About your arm?
My arm?
Yeah, I got the other one.
Then we meet Brad Dourif, who is always amazing.
Yes.
He enters every film like electricity. Like there's something about his eyes whipping around. The director said he gave him zero direction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said Brad came in, knew exactly what he was. They put him in different clothes and just let him loose. And it's
Did he do the artwork too?
no, the artwork is actually done by Pat Mohan, who's a Canadian surrealist painter.
Oh.
She did all the pieces for this. And actually, the flashes that Fahey sees of the murders that the murderer did are actually done after they saw the paintings.
Oh, really?
Those paintings inspired the effects in the film, which is pretty cool.
All right.
You never see Brad in a film where he's bad or phoning it in. He's always on fire. And Jeff says, I want to talk to you about your arm. I have the other one. And Brad says,
Yeah? So, like, you want to arm wrestle or what?
which is like, it's so good. He's like the funniest part of the movie. Brad lets him into the loft. He's a great painter. It's all weird murder nightmarescapes. Jeff notices the hands painting. The way this film shoots, it, like I said, it does all this where you're like, oh, that's the evil one or whatever, which is done really well. Fahey tells Brad he killed people with your arm, and Brad says,
Yeah? What did he do with your arm?
what do you think he did with yours? Which is so good. It's like his comebacks in the scene, man. It's so good. Dourif's speech about what happened since he got his arm is fantastic, and that probably will drop in right about now.
Dumb Cape Cod landscapes. Wall fillers for banks, hotel rooms. That's the best I could do. Nobody had 2 seconds of their precious fucking time for my serious work. I get this arm, and hey, I make $250,000 in the first 3 weeks. My dealer's phone never stops ringing. The New York fucking Times is talking about my searing original talent. I got no complaints. The world is my fucking oyster. I'm a 10-year-old kid on the street corner flying a red, white, and blue kite. You hear what I'm saying?
He kicks Fahey out. Fahey and his wife aren't jiving, so he goes to see Detective Sawchuk, played by Zakes Moki, who we know from Waterworld, Outbreak, Vampire in Brooklyn. Fahey returns home, takes off his coat so we can see the star of the BPTS. This is a 5 out of 5 on the turtleneck scale. It's even blousy but tucked in. It's great.
Dickie-esque.
Oh, so yes. He starts to wrestle his son, only to basically punch him.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not great. Then we see the legs on the basketball court, and I'm not an athletic guy, but the guy is wearing a long sleeve shirt with a short t-shirt over it and shorts over sweatpants.
Gotta get that sweat back in the 90s.
Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, sweating out the water weight? I don't know what this is.
Maybe he's like worried that he's got to warm up enough so he doesn't pull one of his new muscles.
That could be it. Yeah. You gotta sweat those cadaver legs. I don't know. It's weird. Fahey is watching the leg guy play for no reason. Like, seriously, I don't understand if Jeff just knew that the leg guy was playing a game or is supposed to think beyond his daily appointments he's got free time to go check in on a pickup game. It's very strange. White Men Can't Jump is 1992, and I wonder if that's a direct reaction to Body Parts, which is 91.
True, because Woody Harrelson did go with that look a little bit.
And Legs does slam dunk. He jumps in this movie, and I think Spike Lee was like, nah.
Yeah.
Shout Factory's New Blue has an interview with Peter Mernick, and he's great, and it talks about getting that role. And he was the model for all of the severed limbs we see in the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they cast all off of him, probably because he wasn't a famous actor and his time was cheaper. Fahey tails the leg man, so he's like literally right behind him in a car. It's some of the worst spying work you'll ever see. He sees Leg hit the gas, speed through, almost dies. Jeff runs up. They start to talk, and he tells Mark he got his arm, same place he got the legs. Mark doesn't see a problem with it.
That's right. It was kind of rather nonchalant. Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it's rehabilitation, you know? I mean, it takes a while for it to come back. I think that's what happened here. I just, having some trouble with my coordination.
Coordination, Mark. Mark, I followed you. I saw you play basketball. Looked pretty coordinated on the court there. I mean, what's the matter with the car here? That's not coordination.
It's an accident, you know? I mean, accidents happen.
He's really, like, it's not confrontational at all. And then Fahey kind of freaks him out, so Mark suggests he moves on. We next get this beautiful, subtle scene, and I love this. It's Fahey and his wife laying in bed, and the light on Fahey's face is, like, perfect. And he, like, reaches over with the killer hand, and she barely moves her shoulder to be like, nah. And then he turns back, and you see this, like, kind of dead look in his eye, and there's nothing that happens other than this one shot, but you just get that, like, he's out of control, this killer hand's starting to take over, and his wife's like, you gotta get out of here.
Those beautiful blue eyes.
Oh, man. I could take a swim in those. Time passes, and Jeff's asleep, but the arm creeps up and tries to strangle her, which means she's definitely going to say, nuh-uh.
Get away from me!
And he's freaked out and unhinged. You can see the horror on his face. He's losing control of his own body, which is sad and terrifying in this movie, but quite funny in a sci-fi film that came out called Upgrade, which if you haven't seen that, it's a man he's paralyzed, he gets a chip in his spine, and suddenly it takes over his body whenever he says it can. So he becomes like a super great fighter, but he's not controlling his limbs, so while he's doing these crazy fight sequences, you can see his face reacting to like, whoa, what? Oh! It is hilarious to me. I highly recommend it. If you like science fiction,
Yes.
Upgrade is a hoot. He gathers the kids and tells them that he's got to go away.
Daddy loves you guys. Very, very much.
Why? Are you sad with Mommy?
No, honey.
Can I come?
No, Billy, you can't.
It's a sweet little scene in a Frankenstein thriller piece. He tells the doc, I want the arm off. It's a fantastic scene. The dialogue's electric. She won't take the arm off, culminating in Jeff saying,
Fuck you and all your bullshit! I want this fucking arm off!
fuck you and all your bullshit. Which is like, everything else is so nuanced. Fuck you and all your bullshit is like, all right, I guess
That would have been the
pretty
Oscar
much
clip.
covers it all, I guess. He goes to a hotel room and writes in his journal. Then he goes to a bar with Brad Dourif and Legs, and I wanted to party with these guys. This looks super fun. The black turtleneck in the scene, second fave, so it's going to get a 4.5 out of 5 on the BPTS. Jeff says,
I mean, where does evil, where does it live? Does it live in the, soul? In the mind? Maybe it lives in the heart? Maybe it lives in the flesh.
or the turtleneck is what I would have added. Brad says, listen to what your arm's saying to you, which is like, you know these actors are so good because that line is ridiculous.
You gotta stop fighting it. Go with the flow. Don't be so stiff. Listen to what your arm's saying to you.
And for someone to find a way to say it that makes sense in a scene, it's like, give him an award. Like, that's incredible. But some random guy says, hey, asshole. A fight ensues. Fahey punches the crap out of like 3 people with just the one killer hand. And then Legs tries to stop him. He elbows Legs, which the killer legs don't take nicely, and kick Fahey. So now you have the killer limbs turning on each other. It's pretty amazing. This isn't a bad movie or a funny bad movie. I think it's a good movie that navigates tone really well. And the times you rewatch it, you realize like, oh, that could have been total trash, or this could have been just laughably garbage. And instead, like, I mean, there's certainly times you might laugh at one part, or like, you know, I don't know, find more things dramatic and whatnot. But I think it's really well done. Legs returns home with the groceries, and things aren't going well. He's having trouble up the steps. He gets in, goes to call Jeff. It goes to a machine.
Tell me all about it.
Hey, Bill. Hey, Bill, it's Mark Draper calling. Just calling to, see what's going on with you. Just see what's up. I'm at home. Just, Mark? No.
So Jeff heads over. The door falls off, and he opens the door to the bedroom and finds Legs, minus legs.
Yes.
They've been removed a few inches down from the hip, which is that, I mean, you talk about socket stuff. It looks like
I remember seeing the removal of it and thinking like, whoa, it actually seems kind of a pretty. I thought that was kind of on point, like where they ripped it, where you saw the scars, and like it just had been. But then you kind of wonder if it was that easy to rip off. How
Right.
After he played that wicked game of basketball and dunked the basketball, I was like, they seem pretty solid there.
Yeah, seemed pretty good. I don't know what this is saying about the shoddy work that's done by this doctor. The detective asks Fahey some questions and says, come on downtown. Dourif hears something in the studio. He goes and makes a bloody line over the shoulder of the painting, and then someone throws him out a window. The killer's wearing white canvas shoes, which I found creepy for some reason. And he twists Brad's arm out of the socket and off. And it just comes, like, right off. It's pretty gross. Brad impacts with an oncoming police cruiser, which is a brutal way to die. Detective says, you'll be safe, you're with me. And Fahey looks off in the distance and says,
I'm not safe. I'm next.
Amazing. Dr. Webb's there in a car, which is odd, if you think about it. Why is
she has like a homing beacon?
Yeah, I know. It's pretty crazy these people find each other. Now we get to the favorite sequence of the film. This was the big takeaway when I saw the film in the theater. If you watch like how this thing's put together, it's really pretty incredible. They had like 2 miles that was closed off for road maintenance that they shot this on. You get a beautiful craning shot from a street light. The flares are incredible. The crane down to the car resting. Suddenly lights pass by and pulls up right next to him. Fahey's smoking with his arm out the window. And, a guy slaps on handcuffs, and if you weren't into the sequence yet, it's gonna get crazy. Fahey is great. The stunt work's baffling. Neck brace guy is so odd. And speaking of the brace, the man has Charles' head, and the use of the brace is an homage to the Peter Lorre film Mad Love, based off the novel Hands of Orlok. And you can just Google if you're not familiar with Peter Lorre movies. I was a huge Peter Lorre kid. Just type in Peter Lorre Mad Love, and the images pop up of him in this crazy neck brace.
Oh, really?
And this was their like tribute to that, which I think is pretty awesome. Fahey punches him, and they race off. Charlie has a severed arm on his dashboard, which is just pretty amazing. Fahey shoots the cuffs, the neck brace escapes, only to later crash into a car that explodes into flames. And then this also haunted me as a kid seeing this. He panics and starts gathering the limbs, and he gets out of the car, and as he walks away, it explodes in slow motion, and then he's there holding it, and you see the leg with the bulb of the bone sticking out.
Yeah, the head of the femur.
The head of the femur, yeah. It's.
Did you look at those appendages though and realize like they didn't look as beefy and as big as when they were on the person?
Yeah.
So that they kind of seem like they changed altogether.
Yeah, that's possible.
For how big he portrayed himself and how strong of a villain he was, and then he picks up all these parts and they seem really scrawny.
You know what's weird is I've seen this movie probably 10 times at least, and I've never thought about him having the body parts back. Well, I guess because we don't see his chest part until the end.
Yeah.
Because his head's on someone else's body.
That's true.
I never thought about it. He must have been like a really wiry little guy.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Because you look at the basketball scene, that guy seemed pretty big and what he was capable of doing. And the strength of all the squeezing and the punching and the strangling. So you'd imagine like the original villain was like big man.
Yeah.
But then the head goes on another body, right?
Yep.
And it was only the head that was transplanted.
Right, and the torso went nowhere.
So that guy who got the head transplant had to be incredibly strong, right? If he's ripping off legs and he's ripping arms out of sockets, which is almost...
We don't know where his head went.
Yeah, it's almost beyond human capacity.
Well, sure. I hope so.
Unless that stuff wasn't, again, a shoddy selling job.
That's a good point. The doctor puts the coat around him because you could catch a cold collecting your own dead limbs. My mother always said that to me as a child. When you go out limb harvesting, wear a coat. Fahey writes in his journal again, which is great, and then he mails it. he heads into the hospital, and there's a sterile area, and you work in one. So what does that entail? Like, do you have to wash your shotguns before you go in?
Yes.
Because I mentioned this to you previously. We had a conversation where I was like, I want to see a picture of you in the sterile garb, and you're like, I can't do that. Like, I can't just have my cell phone out in a sterile area. So, like, what is the what's the process? Walk me through when you're about to go in there, what you have to do.
Yeah. So first change in the medical scrubs. You can never bring your own stuff in, right? Because they wash them a certain way to sterilize the scrubs. But once you put the scrubs on, they're no longer sterile, and you interact in a way where you're still not ready to go into the operating room. There'll be a sanctioned off area once you pass through these doors. They want you to be masked or gowned. You're still not fully sterile, but you can't have facial exposure.
Do you do this solo?
Yeah.
Or is someone not like there to dress you like in the movies?
When you actually get into the room.
Okay.
So there's like kind of a tiered process to this whole thing.
Awesome.
Where there's locker room, then there's a surgical area where you have to wear headgear and you have to wear scrubs. They prefer that you wear masks. And then
headgear like pea things? Or...
yeah, just like high school. Yep.
Like a helmet?
Like one of the headgear, like a gowns, like a cap.
Okay.
Like the surgical caps you see people wearing.
Got it.
Or they look like your cafeteria worker with a hairnet, right?
Okay.
And then you do a scrub, so there'll be sinks everywhere, and there's a bunch of different washing soaps that you can use to sanitize your hands.
There's not just one?
No, you could actually, like, some people have allergies, so they have to
sure.
you have to know what to use. And then there's like betadine, and there's chlorhexidine, so
Are these like the different colored things? Like sometimes you see the one that's like an orangish.
That's
pinkish...
betadine,
Got it.
and then the pink one is chlorhexidine. So
Okay.
Different stringents to help kill the bacteria. And you clean under your nails, and there's actually a whole rhythm to it. When we were in school, like you get trained. You have a whole like dedicated session. It's almost like a little graduating course that you do.
Is the rhythm Mambo number 5?
Yes. If only you could have some music. Usually it's some older nurse that's watching you over your shoulder to make sure you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Counting how many times you go back and forth each finger, and you kind of quadrant your hand where you do the top, the side, the bottom, and the other side, and you do that for every finger. And then between the finger and the hand, and then the wrist, and then the forearm. And you work your way up to the elbow, and you do the other side, and then you have to go through the water a certain way. And then you go into the operating room wet. So you got your hands up like you do the classic MASH scene, you know? Yeah. And that's when you go in there, they give you a sterile towel, and everybody's got helmets and face masks on, medical masks on, in that sterile environment. And even then, not everybody's sterile. There are reps in the room that come in with masks on, and there are a lot of people kind of lingering. But
they're not putting their hands in.
Correct. Yeah. There's the surgical field, right? So everything they identified as everything that's blue, don't touch. Okay. And so that's with the medical equipment and the patient table. So and then you come in and you gown up. So you walk over to a medical surgical scrub, surgical tech they call it. And they put the gown on you, and they put your hands in the gloves, and you get multiple layers of gloves, and somebody is behind you, and they try to tie you up. And we wear helmets, so because there's so much spray of blood and bone, we don't wear just the face shields. We actually wear a full helmet. It looks like a miner's cap with a cinch on the back. I wear one with a light on it, and then they put a magnet face shield, and they pull this hood over the top, and they plug it into a battery, and it blows a little fan in there.
I was going to say, it sounds really hot.
Yeah, it can be. It can be, because the batteries don't last, and so you'll be in the middle of a case, and if you don't have somebody change your battery, people have hit the deck before.
And is this like, this is a routine thing, but are they talking to you when you're getting gloved up and your face mask on, or is it something that you're like, how was the barbecue, Larry?
A little bit, yeah. If your face isn't exposed, you're not supposed to be breathing or talking.
Got it.
But yeah, I mean, everybody's kind of joking around with each other, and you get to know the people that you work with quite well, so you kind of know what their comfort zones are, and usually reflecting on weekend stuff or patient stuff or
human stuff.
Human stuff. A lot of everybody likes to share their cases and their horror stories if they work on something that maybe you didn't get to see. Like, I was in a room last week and I saw this thing, and so they like to share all that.
Yeah, that's one thing I missed about like my old job was one the kind of chaotic stuff like you touched on in like say an ER situation where you're helping people, keeping people safe, but you're in that mindset that like none of it's disturbing you what's going on, you know, and when you casually mention it to somebody, they're like completely repulsed, you know, and you're just like, I don't understand. Like, I told you I was just helping someone out of a cab and they were covered in their own feces, but I don't understand why. Like, we did a good... Anyway, I love the normalcy of it. And then when you see two people, like you or someone that you're working with, talking casually about stories that would have other people just reeling and fleeing the room, you know, I love that.
Yeah, most people will show each other, like, pictures of family members, or, like, right? And we're showing each other pictures of, like, check out this fracture, like, check out the angle of this foot. You know, yeah, we're a special population of people that can tolerate this and really get into it.
Yeah, I love that. It's necessary. I tell you.
Yes.
We see all the parts hanging with tubes and stuff, and the doctor says,
Science, like nature, destroys to build.
I don't know what that means, but it was pretty creepy. The music by Luke Dicker. I mean, I just love the soundtrack. I think that this, like the director said, it's a horror movie made with a big budget, and there's few movies that get that chance, and I think the score in this really makes it feel a lot bigger than just like a little body swap kind of, you know, type movie situation. I guess it's body part swap, not body swap, but the parts are moving and breathing, and that's not common, right? Like, you said you haven't done a lot of removing of limbs, but do they move afterwards? Is it like...
There could be some stimulation. I'm trying to think of an example where that was.
Like a hand you're working on just flips you off?
Yeah. It just points and then gives you like the cut.
It's enough.
There will be sometimes some neural stimulation that you can kind of get some residual response, but it's very rare.
Not really. Okay.
Not in the way that it was demonstrated.
Right.
Lovely scene.
Like the whole rib cage is just sort of moving around, like this weird sultry thing going on. The doc says, "You don't want the arm? We're ready to take it." So Jeff brandishes a gun. She breaks it down in a little speech, and then sadly neck brace knocks him out.
That's right.
Somehow Fahey's arm breaks loose, punches the doctor, which I don't condone, and neck brace enters, shotguns a person's head. Fahey and neck brace struggle, and Fahey breaks his neck.
That's
super easy. The biggest casualty is the shotgun snags the turtleneck, and so, you know, that's a real bummer for me, rendering it a 3 out of 5 on the BPTS. Fahey shotguns the other body parts, calls the detective, and suddenly someone grabs a gun. It's neck brace, and he shoots, but Fahey moves, and the doc gets shot. Fahey rebounds with a shotgun. Last body part is neck brace's head. Boom goes the dynamite. And that's the end of the movie. These final 2 minutes were a reshoot.
Really?
Initially, Charlie, in a neck brace, he is in a vegetable state and is put into like an insane asylum, and he's just sitting staring out a window. And test audiences found this big bummer. It's not fun at all. So that last 2 minutes were shot in one day. It's a whole reshoot where they kill off everybody.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then we see Fahey, and he says once the brain was destroyed, the arm was his.
As I sit here today, the only survivor of Dr. Webb's experiments, I feel somewhat resigned. The questions I've been asking are quite simply beyond my reach. Where does evil live? Is evil in the flesh? If a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Inquiring minds want to know, and life goes on. I do know that evil does not live in my arm because since Charlie has died, I've experienced none of the violent tendencies the arm initially manifested. I've adjusted and accepted the fact that I am the recipient of a miraculous new surgical technique. And to that end, I owe Dr. Webb and Charlie. The arm's mine now, Chuck. I won it, fair and square.
And they relax by a tree with suspenseful music playing, and Fahey is finally free of turtlenecks. He's wearing a t-shirt in this one scene, so that's what the takeaway is, really.
It's only a matter of time.
Any favorite moments, anything we missed before we move on from body parts?
Boy. There's so much. The car scene, so the one thing that the early initial trauma of that whole movie was I kind of the name of the title says it all, right?
Yeah.
And we had talked before, so I kind of
Yeah.
had an idea. But when I saw that car, I was wondering how he was going to get in this accident. You had mentioned it again before I watched it. And so, but I didn't think it was going to be a wobbly tired car next to him. I was thinking like he's not paying attention. He brakes, hits the back of a, like I could see that scenario. But the wobbly tire, I was driving through Chicago once on my way back home from grad school. And what goes zipping by me on the interstate at 80 miles an hour is this flesh colored, like 80s Mustang, rusted out.
Yeah.
And the back wheel on this thing, or the front wheel, was wobbling like that.
Yeah.
Was making figure eights. I'd never seen a car like that. Fortunately, it didn't fall off and I didn't go through a windshield.
Yeah.
But it took me right back there immediately to that moment. And I remember the guy was just casually driving it like, yeah, this is how this rolls. Mm-hmm. But that tire scene took me back.
Yeah.
Man.
I love that. This movie, just like in Final Destination 2 with the log truck scene, I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, yeah.
But it changes how you look at the freeway. Like a log truck, you see a log truck for the rest of your life, and you're going to think like, well, I better get in a different lane. And the same thing with the wobbly tire. Like if I stare at tires on the freeway because like I didn't even know it was because of this movie until I rewatched the Blu-ray. But yeah, it's interesting how that can...
Movies like that. Yeah, my first horror movie was Christine.
Yeah.
My first nightmare movie was Christine. I couldn't get that out of my head. That car scared the crap out of me. So that looking for that kind of red classic car always freaked me out. If I'd see it, forget it. And then was it the horror movies that came out with Kurt Russell? And he was the car driver. What was it? The Grindhouse series.
Oh yeah, Death Proof.
Yes, the girl having her leg out the window in the car accident scene.
Oh yeah.
That stays with me.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but that scene stays with me.
I think in an original version of this script, the arm gets run over. Like he comes out of the car, and then a car goes over the arm, destroying it. But I think ultimately they decided it was too gruesome, and it was better that you just don't see the arm, and then it's a new arm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Says who?
I don't know. It's something that I've like gone back and forth on. Yeah. Also, I guess they use... In the film, I haven't noticed, no offense to Eric Red if you hear this, but they used a separate stunt hand for the arm that's not the Charlie arm. So one hand is slightly smaller.
Well, at least it's the same color.
Which I just thought was real. I was like, I've seen this movie more than most people probably, and I didn't even pick up on that until he mentioned it, but
interesting.
I think it's pretty fascinating. All right, moving on to final questions. So we're no longer talking about the film. We're talking about you. Are there any common misconceptions about being a physician's assistant?
A lot of people think I'm on my way to becoming a medical doctor. So they tell me, well, congratulations. And you got to be pretty close to being able to do this on your own. And I say, nope, this is the end of the road for me. So I have to spend literally about 5 minutes educating them as to what a physician assistant is.
Yeah.
Many people would be like, well, good luck when you become a doctor. So they don't hear anything I say.
Yeah.
Or they're disappointed because I corrected them. And it kind of maybe deflated whatever perception they had of me.
Weird.
So yeah, that part's always a little hard.
I mean, I understand not getting it because in this podcast I've learned so much about just how different jobs work. And that not everything is a fight to be the thing that people see as the top. Like the doctor's up here, so the nurses want to be a doctor, and this person wants to, yeah, that totally makes sense though. That people would think like, well, when are you going back to school?
Yeah, in the modern era now, like nurses can become doctors. They can get their doctorate, right? And there are people that walk around and say, no, call me a doctor. I'm a doctor of nursing. Same with physical therapists now that are required to become doctors. Oh. And so they're doctor of physical therapists. So many people are walking around with these titles, and the medical field has changed considerably where the doctors have specialized and they want to be specialists. They want to just don't bother me with anything else. And the nurses have kind of fulfilled that baseline role of generalized healthcare. Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Basically, it's they've brought in a whole new level of employee to handle almost like the triage of a patient, right?
Okay, got it.
So if you want to go see a doctor, you're usually going to kind of see, primary cares and family practice doctors still exist, but if you want to get to a specialist, you're usually going to see some baseline provider.
Okay.
And you get sifted through and see if it's warranted, right? And a lot of medical systems, they kind of stop you there.
Yeah.
Or they move you more laterally than they move you horizontally.
Mm-hmm.
So you get kind of stuck in that. And so the PAs and the MPs are kind of brought in to help mitigate that role.
But as a PA, you not only can be in a situation where you're helping clean out someone's knee cavity or something, but you could also be pulled into ER and somewhere else. Like,
yeah, it's one of the appealing things with being a physician assistant is you don't specialize in care. So let's say tomorrow I'm like, you know what, I'm done with orthopedics. I could go apply for an emergency room job and get hired. I wouldn't have to go back and do schooling for it.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a real diversity about the role.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that I think sounds the most interesting, like, or appealing, I would say, to me, if I could do your job, would be the ability to have not just the same thing every day.
Yeah. Yeah. There are people that kind of move between like doing urgent care stuff on the weekend, make a little extra money, being exposed to all the variations of medicine. I kind of like just being in orthopedics. It's something I thought I used to do general orthopedics, back, shoulders, hands, foot and ankle. I worked for a private practice for years where we did everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got this job where I just do joints, and I thought I'd be bored out of my mind, and I'm not actually. I actually really enjoy it.
You're super into joints.
Yeah.
That's the big takeaway. What is a good day like for you as a physician's assistant?
Oh. Good day in the clinic or good day in the operating room? Because they're kind of, they actually look so different.
Clinic.
All right. So clinic is usually a ton of injections, aspirations. Like today, got to stick needles in people's joints and pull off fluid and send them off to a lab and see what they look like. And
that sounds incredibly painful.
It is. Really like to walk patients through and kind of reassure them. So I take a lot of pride in educating the patient, calming them down, and giving them an expectation without really filling their head with what I'm doing, but an expectation of like, look, we're going to do this for this reason.
Right.
And have them really participate in their care a little bit. So, yeah, a lot of that goes a long way into being able to get through the procedure. And then I just talk, so I distract them.
Yeah.
Before they know it, they're usually asking me, I'm done already?
That is one thing that I have to say, so this is on record, that I saw that you do so well. Our daughters are buddies, yes. And at one point they were playing, and your daughter was like, I sprained my wrist or broke my wrist. It was something wrist-related. And you were checking it out as a father, and so I was watching, and then what you were doing, manipulating the wrist and hand, was that of like a physician's assistant or someone who knows what they're doing. And the banter that you had involved was very thoughtful and caring. And I only picked up on it because it reminded me of like when a dentist like shakes your cheek during a shot and asks you something about boats or something.
Yes.
And then they're done with the whole thing. And I just thought it was so well. Like, I just saw that, and I was like, oh, he's really good.
Yeah, it's my side job is being a magician.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's another layer of skill. Like, someone could do the technical aspects of a job, but they don't have the, I don't know what you say, the human interactive way of being that can either put you at ease or completely distract you from the part that you don't really need to be knowing. Like, you know, you don't need to be sitting there going, now the needle's going really deep.
Yeah, look.
Like,
look how, check out how big this thing is.
Look at all this stuff coming out of you.
Yeah. No, that's, I think that was one of the things that initially I was looking at the pediatrician thing of it, because I was like that with my cousin, my niece and my nephew, and I was volunteering at some of the hospitals when I was living in the Bay Area. And kind of helping kids with their pain and working with them. So I was almost doing like that, like I said, kind of the clown magic trick type of thing where I was getting them to play, but doing an evaluation. My mind was thinking of the exam while their mind was thinking of like, okay, he's kind of making a game of this.
Yeah. Oh, this is fun. This isn't bad.
Yeah, it works with adults sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Sometimes.
I'm game. I'm always game.
Except when you pull out the 6-inch needle and
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have a story. I won't tell you right now, but it's awful. And sadly, I have to ask, what is a bad day like?
Bad days.
In clinic is what we're talking about.
Oh. But now you're starting to get into the dynamic of the patient population that I work with.
Sure.
I don't know if... depends who's listening to this.
Yeah. It's my mom.
How you doing?
She's a big fan.
Oh, good. She's a sweet lady.
Thank you.
Bad days. Usually just the patients that kind of come in with a preconceived idea of what it is that they want, and they've got their mind made up, and they won't really hear anything else. They're not open to the educational process that I'm trying to tell them about their own bodies and get them to participate and see. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to have, 20 minutes with them? And they've got a lifetime with whatever it is they're bringing to me. So if I can't help them identify it and understand what it's going to look like maybe down the road, or if they keep doing this behavior that they're adamant about wanting to do or needing to do, then I kind of feel like I haven't done my job, and it feels a little empty.
Yeah.
But the clinic doesn't really bring about too many bad days unless you get bad personalities.
Right.
And those people that kind of crap on your staff and crap on you, those are the bad days, and it's few and far between with what I do.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, operating room is a different story.
What's a bad day like? I don't want to ask.
The case that you think is going normal and the bones crack and you get a break, or a code. And I've only been a part of that twice, where somebody's actually coded or aspirated on the table and flatlined.
Oh yeah.
Where you're in the middle of surgery, and it's haunting because the anesthesiologist who's kind of controlling the show, they're that person on stage, right, doing managing sound and lights and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones who are managing the breathing and the heart rate and the rhythms and the medications, and you can hear rustling and you can tell there's panic, and then all of a sudden it goes quiet and you're asked to stop, and then there's clarity, but on the other side of it's this person who's hustling to save a life and breaking down a field and converting an orthopedic case into a life-saving case where people flood the room, sterile field goes out the window because you're just trying to save their life.
Right. Because if they're down for too long, they'll see ghosts when they come back.
True. Yeah.
Or I've seen the Kevin Bacon movie. I know how it works.
Flatliners is real, man.
The first one, not the remake.
Yes.
That sounds strange is a better word, because you've created this, like, just the way you're walking through it, and the calmness and then the rustling, it's very cinematic.
Yeah, it's I guess if I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about it. I grew up with tornadoes. It kind of feels like that. Like right before, the cloud, like something's not right. You could see that in the environment.
Yeah.
And like kind of you're getting that pinpricky, unsettling feeling. Yeah. It's really quiet, and then it hits. It's just kind of a bang.
Yeah.
And then you just have to jump into it, and you got to get your mind right. You got to get it on a track of survival, and it's amazing. One credit to docs is that sometimes they can kind of feel very vacant without a bedside manner, but the good ones click in.
Mm-hmm.
And as mechanical as they may seem sometimes when you're wanting compassion from them, when it comes to something like that, how they are so robotic, and it's like, okay, this is the step, this is what we need, move this, get this. Yeah. But there's nothing like doing chest compressions to save a life. I mean, that's you do it on a dummy if you've done CPR classes, and
have you had to do that?
Yeah, I've had to do it. And the intensity and the fatigue that you truly experience is you can't even describe it.
You can't just stop and be like, I'm a little tired.
Actually, that's a good team approach. People will identify it, and they actually move you.
They will switch.
Yeah, they move you.
Yeah.
So the whole count to 30 and then tag out. No, it's not a wrestling match. It's people identify it, and you kind of are all up there helping each other and encouraging each other. Yeah, it's a crazy scene.
Yeah.
It's with you for a while.
Yeah, that would be the opposite of good, I think. Definitely different. What's your favorite thing about being a
PA? It's the empowering people about their bodies. I think we all go through life a little bit not really stopping enough to think about what's inside us and how we move and the finer things, right? Everything that we taste and we hear and we see and we love and all that. Those are daily stimulations we get, but we don't stop to think like, my back hurts. Why is that? What am I doing? And what's that all involve? And you kind of look at the intricacies of it, and I'm fortunate enough to know, like, oh, well, this overlaps with that, and you got a little imbalance, and maybe you need to stop doing this, or you need to add this to your repertoire. And then encouraging people. Like it's kind of that motivational speaker type thing. When you get somebody that's really in pain and hasn't received answers, or everybody's kind of brushing them off, and you actually sit with them and tell them something that nobody has had and they feel appreciative, you well up with them. You know, you've been in the field of helping people. And when you have a connection with somebody, it imprints, it can take your breath away a little bit. It takes your words away. And it's important that you stop and you reflect either the good that you've done, because I think we don't get time to do that, right? We kind of get marched along to the next thing, to know that I did something good. You know, I provided something for this person that they haven't had, and it's going to stick with them. And maybe change will happen, maybe it won't, but hopefully, you know, it's a spark.
Yeah.
You know? That's the best part.
That's awesome. That brings us to the final question.
Wow.
And it's my favorite question.
Double Jeopardy?
Yes. Please answer in the form of a question. No. Matt, what are your dreams like?
Oh boy, what's this rated?
Oh, I haven't got that before.
Yeah. Are we talking like my future dreams or my nightly dreams?
No, nightly. I don't talk aspirations.
Yeah. Wait a second. We don't know if there's going to be tomorrow. Oh boy, what are my dreams like? I have a very fantastical mind. I grew up with a very scientific, sci-fi type love. Probably not anywhere to the extent as what you have after our many conversations of what we've been exposed to. But I was a child of the '80s cartoon phenomenon.
Yeah.
God, I couldn't get enough of that, and that bled into the '90s as I was kind of finishing schooling, and a big Star Wars nerd. I still am. So I lived a ton of fantasies. So my mind usually focuses on some kind of fantastical thing with powers, whether it's walking in the wind and not moving, or trying to run and you stay in place, but then if you walk, you actually make progress.
Oh, wow.
I used to fly a lot in my dreams. I visit a lot of repetitious dreams where it's like, I've been here before and I know it. In the dream where I'll see it. A lot of times I'm flying to Germany and I'm looking forward to being on a plane and sleeping on the plane.
Do you have family there?
I've been there. I don't have any family that I know of there.
Okay.
But yeah, there's crazy stuff. I used to have the dream of like, oh my God, I'm in class and I haven't done my homework. That panicky one.
Right.
Sometimes I'll just dream of random like high school friends I've had or girlfriends I've had, in not an uncomfortable way, but like in a way where it's just like crystal clear, and so we're always working through stuff in my dreams.
Yeah, it's interesting that none of it's work related.
No. I honestly, now that you say that, no, I don't have work related dreams. I don't dream of.
You don't sound stressed.
Yeah, sometimes.
Because there's like that stress dream thing where you're constantly returning to work or whatever. Or the things that you loathe. Like I used to loathe waking up in the morning, and so I would dream that I wake up, shower, brush my teeth, get dressed and everything, and wake up, and I'd have to do it all over again.
Oh, no.
And it was just, it was that process. It was that Monday, for me it was a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 grind that my brain was like, get me out of this like rigid box.
Wow, yeah. I think as we kind of evolved, they changed. I think there was a phase in my life where I was having those kind of anxiety, provoking dreams a little bit. Not on that scale though, not on the Groundhog Day scale. But they would, there would be the stress component of whether or not it's like, I didn't do my assignment, I forgot somebody's event or something like that. But I very seldom dream of the people really close to me.
Yeah.
Really close to me. I've had some crazy dreams, some really like satanic dark dreams, like where like steam with the writing on the window with steams and like speaking in tongues to a demon presence that looked like a black shadow.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had some
That
crazy
sounds awesome.
dreams.
Some crazy death metal dreams.
Yeah, and I've had a dream of like sitting in a diner with my great grandpa right after he died, telling me, I think it's one of the ghost stories we've shared once.
Oh, that's right.
The campsite ghost story where that night I dreamt of sitting in a cafe with him and him telling me like, it's okay, you're gonna be fine, everything's gonna be okay, just don't worry about a thing. And waking up the next day and like part of our camping gear was just like dragged out and opened in the middle of like this, under this old oak tree where the arms extended parallel to the ground for about 20 feet. Yeah.
That's wild.
That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, totally. People are like, that's what I want to hear about.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, you listen to Jeff Fahey's stories.
Yes, turtlenecks.
That's what you get. Well, Matt, thank you so much for being in this episode.
Derek.
It's been super awesome. I'm glad we finally got to record this.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, man.